Guram Kutateladze's setback. The tension began early, long before the main card. Guram Kutateladze walked into the octagon with a corner team that could have headlined its own pay-per-view. Khamzat, Ilia Topuria, and Ilia's brother Alexandre all stood at his side. That alone raised eyebrows. After all, each of those names has been stirring the pot in the UFC for a while. Chimaev, known for his fearsome wrestling and unapologetic callouts, was there to push Guram forward. Ilia Topuria, fresh off his own string of impressive performances, never shies away from a bold statement, especially when it comes to calling out big names like Charles Oliveira. Unfortunately for Guram, the star power in his corner couldn't prevent the crushing disappointment that followed. He was outworked by Kawhi Fernandez across 3 rounds, losing a unanimous decision that left many in the crowd stunned. For a moment, it seemed like the hush in the arena mirrored Guram's shocked expression. Fans who had expected him to dominate were left asking if the weight of expectations and the bright lights of a high-profile corner had taken its toll. Nathaniel Wood, decision. King or underappreciated technician? Few fighters embrace their home cage advantage like Nathaniel Wood. Stepping out to a thunderous reception at the Indigo in London, he immediately fed off the crowd's energy. People on social media joked that he practically becomes a superhuman when he fights on English soil, and his bout against Morgan Shire only reinforced that notion. From the opening seconds, Nathaniel appeared confident and calculated. He slipped shots and countered with crisp strikes, dropping Morgan in the first round and proving he wasn't there merely to pitter-patter. Yet, once the early storm passed, fans noticed a theme. Wood seemed content to pick his spots and systematically rack up points. Dominant? Certainly. But the finish never came. As the final horn sounded, the scorecards leaned heavily in Nathaniel's favor, earning him yet another unanimous decision win. That's when whispers about him being the decision king started circulating. Critics voiced concerns that, while he has undeniable skill, those highlight reel knockouts and submissions aren't materializing. Chris Duncan. Guillotine, shock, and calling his shot. Chris Duncan walked into the octagon carrying the weight of doubters who believed Jordan Vucjanic's speed would overwhelm him. For weeks, online chatter insisted that Duncan was outmatched, that he didn't have the footwork to keep up, or that he'd be out-wrestled at every turn. But in a sport where a single moment can change everything, Duncan flipped the script with a brilliant display of grappling and submission prowess. The turning point came in the second round. Jordan attempted to scramble out of a sudden takedown threat, but Duncan saw an opening. With surprising fluidity, he locked in a guillotine choke, one he later revealed had been sharpened by none other than Dustin Poirier, a master of the craft. According to Duncan, Poirier had shown him the perfect reverse handshake grip that puts maximum pressure on the neck. He described it as a game-over hold, and that's exactly what it was for Jordan. Alexia. Tanara's statement. Win in Molly McCann's tearful retirement. If you asked fans before UFC London about Alexia Tanara, most would admit they barely knew her name. A late-notice debutante? A cheerful personality from the Hebas Family Academy? Few anticipated she would dismantle fan-favorite Molly McCann in the very first round. Yet that's precisely what happened. With a carefree smile and an upbeat energy she calls Alexia Delivery, Tanara stormed the cage and found her opening to sink a rear-naked choke that ended the fight as quickly as it began. Molly McCann, beloved in the UK, known for her grit and adored for her entertaining style, seemed out of sorts from the opening bell. Where she typically thrives in scrappy exchanges, she suddenly found herself on the canvas, unable to counter the speed and tenacity of the newcomer. The abruptness of the finish shocked both fans and commentators, but nothing was more surprising than what came after. Molly announced her retirement right there in the cage. Kevin Holland's edge over Gunnar Nelson, judging chaos and grappling progress. When Kevin Holland steps into the cage, you never quite know what to expect. He's shown flashes of brilliance, comedic in-cage chatter, and at times, glaring holes in his ground defense, particularly when matched against much larger opponents. But in London, he aimed to show the world that his welterweight run could be something special, especially when he took on the ever-dangerous Gunnar Nelson. The fight itself wasn't a barn burner from start to finish, but it carried its own intrigue. Gunnar, known for his patient, measured approach and slick jiu-jitsu, tried to find moments to close the distance and impose his grappling. Kevin, showcasing longer limbs and improved takedown defense, seemed more prepared than ever to keep the fight standing. Even so, the clash moved to the mat several times, and to the surprise of some viewers, Holland held his own, fighting off submission attempts and working his way back to his feet whenever he could. Carlos Ulberg versus Jan Blachowicz. Tight decision and point fighting critics. Carlos Ulberg stepped into the co-main event with an impressive run behind him, but facing Jan Blachowicz was a whole different beast. Jan, a former champion whose legendary Polish power once stunned even the likes of Israel Adesanya, posed a challenge unlike anything Ulberg had encountered. Many wondered how Ulberg's finesse and footwork would deal with the raw power and stoic demeanor of Jan, who rarely backs down from a stand-up firefight. From the first horn, the fight took on a methodical pace. Ulberg circled, tapped Jan with shots that didn't always carry knockout power, but kept the Polish fighter at bay. Jan, for his part, looked for opportunities to close the distance and land a single thunderous blow or secure a timely takedown. It was a chess match, with both men wary of making a costly error. As the rounds wore on, the scoring became less and less obvious. Some fans gave the edge to Ulberg for striking volume and activity, while others felt Jan controlled the cage and delivered the more impactful moments. Sean Brady's dazzling submission over Leon Edwards. When Leon Edwards rose to the top by dethroning Kamaru Usman, many believed a new era had begun in the welterweight division. Leon showcased crisp striking, sneaky takedowns, and composure under immense pressure. But in MMA, momentum can change in an instant. And at UFC London, Sean Brady was on a mission to prove that hype doesn't mean invincibility. From the opening bell, Brady's approach was clear: non-stop pressure. He relentlessly pursued takedowns, chain wrestling to wear Edwards down. While Leon defended skillfully at first, stuffing several shots and circling away, it became evident that Brady's pace was unlike most in the division. By the third round, Edwards showed flashes of the striking brilliance that had carried him to gold. Sharp jabs, well-timed kicks, but he couldn't fully deter Brady's forward march. Then came the pivotal fourth round. Leon tried to land a fight-altering head kick, reminiscent of the one that finished Usman, but Brady slipped, ducked under, and locked onto a body lock before dragging him down. In the ensuing scramble, Brady expertly slid his arm under Leon's chin, cinching in a tight guillotine. Within seconds, Edwards was forced to tap.